She had cleaned this stage 1,000 times, but tonight she stood on it as someone else entirely. The Got Talent arena buzzed with its familiar electric energy. Spotlights carved through the darkness like golden swords, illuminating the iconic stage where dreams were made and shattered nightly. The audience filled every seat, their collective breath creating a wall of anticipation that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of heartbeats. At the judges' table, Simon Cowell adjusted his black shirt collar, his dark eyes scanning the wings with practiced indifference. He had seen it all before, the hopefuls, the desperate, the delusion. 20 years of judging had built walls around his heart, thick enough to withstand the daily barrage of broken dreams and misplaced confidence. But tonight would be different. The stage lights dimmed to a warm amber glow as the next contestant emerged from the shadows. Maria Santos, 43 years old, stepped into the light wearing a simple, navy dress, the same one she had worn to her daughter's graduation 3 years ago. Her hands trembled as she gripped the microphone, and for a moment she looked exactly like what she was, a woman who didn't belong here. The audience fell silent, sensing something unusual in her presence. She wasn't young, wasn't glamorous, wasn't the typical package that graced this stage. Her graying hair was pulled back in a modest bun, and her shoes, practical, worn flats, told the story of someone who spent her days on her feet. Simon leaned forward slightly, his pen hovering over his notepad. Something about her stillness commanded attention. "What's your name? And what will you be performing tonight?" the host asked, his voice voisu through the arena. Maria cleared her throat, the sound amplifying through the speakers. "My name is Maria Santos, and she paused, her voice catching. "I work here. I clean these stages every night, dreaming it was me up here." The confession hung in the air like a prayer. Simon's pen stopped moving entirely. In the audience, a woman gasped softly. "I've been cleaning this building for 8 years," Maria continued, her voice growing stronger. "Every night, I mop these floors, dust these chairs, and polish this stage. And every night, I watch the rehearsals from the back hallway. I know every song that's been sung here, every dream that's been shared." She looked directly at Simon then, her brown eyes bright with unshed tears. "I never thought I have the courage to audition. But my daughter, she applied for me. She said it was time to stop cleaning other people's dreams and start living my own." Simon felt something shift in his chest, a crack in the armor he'd built so carefully. His fingers drummed once against the table, then stopped. "And what will you be singing for us tonight?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," Maria replied. "It's the song I sing while I work. It helps me remember that there's something beyond these walls." The first notes emerged from her lips, like escaped birds, pure and clear. Her voice, untrained but honest, filled the massive arena with a longing so raw it seemed to strip the glamour away from everything artificial. "Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high," Simon's breath caught. This wasn't a performance, it was a confession sung in melody. Each word carried the weight of 8 years spent watching from the sidelines, of dreams deferred but never abandoned. "There's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby." The audience was completely still. Even the crew members backstage had stopped their bustling to listen. In the control booth, cameras captured every nuance of emotion rippling across faces in the crowd. But it was Simon's face that told the real story. His usual mask of professional detachment was slipping, revealing something vulnerable underneath. His eyes, normally sharp and calculating, had grown soft. His jaw, typically set in skeptical judgment, had relaxed. "Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue." The lyrics transported him backward in time, to a small house in Brighton where a young boy named Simon had sung the same song to himself while his parents fought downstairs. He remembered pressing his ear to his bedroom radio, dreaming of stages he'd never seen, of audiences he'd never meet. And the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Maria's voice cracked slightly on the word true, and that small imperfection shattered something inside Simon. He saw himself in her, not the successful judge worth hundreds of millions, but the boy who had been told his dreams were too big, too impossible, too foolish. The song continued, but Simon was no longer just listening. He was remembering his own first audition, the rejection letters, the nights spent working meaningless jobs while harboring impossible hopes. He thought of every young artist he'd dismissed, every dream he'd crushed with casual cruelty. When Maria reached the final chorus, her voice soared higher than it had any right to, carrying not just Luddy, but the accumulated hope of every night she'd spent alone in this arena, singing to empty seats. If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why oh why can't? The last note faded into silence, so complete it felt sacred. For several heartbeats, nobody moved. The arena held its breath, suspended in the aftermath of something that transcended entertainment. Then Simon stood up. It wasn't planned. It wasn't calculated. It was pure instinct, the kind that emerges when the heart overrules the mind. His chair scraped against the floor, the sound sharp in the silence. "Maria," he said, his voice carrying clearly through his microphone. "Stop." She looked at him, confusion and fear flickering across her face. The audience tensed, waiting for the critique they knew was coming. But Simon wasn't walking toward his microphone. He was walking around the judge's table, stepping into the lights, moving toward the stage. "For 8 years," he said as he climbed the steps, "you've been cleaning up after other people's dreams. You've watched thousands of hopefuls stand where you're standing now." The arena was deadly quiet. Cameras tracked his movement as he approached Maria, who stood frozen in disbelief. "You've seen the ones who make it and the ones who don't. You've swept up the confetti after the celebrations and mopped up the tears after the rejections." He stopped directly in front of her, his presence commanding despite his relaxed posture. "Tonight," Simon said, looking directly into her eyes, "you're not cleaning the stage, Maria. You're owning it." The words hit like lightning. Maria's hand flew to her mouth as tears spilled down her cheeks. In the audience, people began to stand. First one, then 10, then hundreds, until the entire arena was on its feet. But Simon wasn't finished. He turned to face the audience, his voice carrying to every corner of the venue. "This woman," he said, gesturing to Maria, "has more courage in her little finger than most people have in their entire bodies. She could have stayed in the shadows forever, content to live vicariously through others. Instead, she chose to risk everything for 3 minutes of truth." He turned back to Maria, his expression softer than anyone had ever seen it. "Your daughter was right," he said quietly, his words meant for her but captured by the microphones. "It was time." Maria nodded, unable to speak. The tears came freely now, 8 years of suppressed dreams finally finding release. "But here's what your daughter doesn't know," Simon continued. "And what you don't know. You don't just have talent, Maria. You have something rarer. You have authenticity. You have soul. You have lived your dreams in your heart for so long that when you finally shared them, they came out perfect." The standing ovation began, then thunderous and sustained. But Simon held up his hand, asking for quiet. "I've been judging performers for most of my adult life," he said. "I've seen technical perfection that left me cold, and I've seen raw talent that moved me. But tonight, I saw something different. I saw someone who reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place." He paused, looking out at the audience and back at Maria. You see, Maria, when I was young, I worked terrible jobs too. I was told my dreams were unrealistic. I was rejected more times than I can count. And somewhere along the way, I think I forgot what it felt like to be the person standing where you're standing now, risking everything for a dream. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Simon Cowell, the man who had become synonymous with harsh judgment, was revealing his own vulnerability. "Thank you," he said simply, "for reminding me." He extended his hand to her, and when she took it, he squeezed gently. "Maria Santos," he announced, turning back to the audience. "This is your stage now. This is your moment. And tomorrow, when you come to work, you won't just be cleaning these floors, you'll be walking on the same ground where you proved that dreams, no matter how long deferred, are never too late." The arena erupted. The standing ovation seemed to go on forever, fed by an emotion deeper than simple appreciation for a performance. People were crying openly, including members of the production crew who had worked hundreds of these shows without being moved. In the front row, a young girl tugged at her mother's sleeve, pointing at the stage with wide eyes. "Mommy, why is everyone crying?" she asked. Her mother, tears streaming down her own face, whispered back, "Because sometimes, sweetheart, dreams come true in the most beautiful way." In the control booth, the director wiped his eyes and made a decision that would change television history. "Keep the cameras rolling," he commanded through his headset. "All of them. Don't cut away. This is bigger than the show." The camera operators, seasoned professionals who had filmed thousands of performances, found themselves struggling to keep their equipment steady. The lead cameraman, a gruff man named Pete, who had worked in television for 30 years, later admitted it was the first time a performance had made him cry behind the lens. At the judges' table, the other judges were on their feet as well, applauding not just Maria, but the moment itself. The reminder that beneath all the production value and competition, at its heart, this show was about human dreams. The female judge dabbed at her mascara, no longer caring about her appearance for the cameras. The comedian judge, known for his quick wit and sharp tongue, found himself speechless for perhaps the first time in his career. But it was the elderly judge, a music industry veteran, who understood most deeply what was happening. He had seen Elvis's first television appearance, had witnessed the birth of rock and roll, had watched music evolve across decades, yet in 40 years of judging talent, he had never seen anything quite like this. Not just the performance, but the transformation it had created in everyone who witnessed it. As the applause continued, Maria stood frozen in the golden spotlight, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. This wasn't just about her anymore. It had become something larger, something that transcended individual dreams and touched something universal in the human experience. Simon, still standing beside her, noticed her trembling and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "Breathe," he whispered, his words caught only by the closest microphones. "This is your moment. Feel every second of it." And in that whispered advice, something profound happened. The harsh judge, who had built his reputation on crushing dreams, was now nurturing one, teaching someone how to receive the very thing he had spent years withholding from others. But in that golden circle of light at center stage, only two people mattered: Maria Santos, who had finally claimed her moment, and Simon Cowell, who had remembered why moments like this mattered. When the applause finally died down, Simon returned to his seat, but something fundamental had changed. The walls he'd built around his heart had cracked wide open, and through those cracks, something he'd almost forgotten was flowing back in. Wonder. Maria left the stage to the longest standing ovation in the show's history. As she disappeared into the wings, Simon picked up his pen to write his critique. But instead of the usual technical notes, he found himself writing something else entirely. "Tonight, I remembered that the best performances aren't about perfection, they're about truth. And sometimes, the most beautiful truth comes from the most unexpected places, from the woman who cleans up after everyone else's dreams while nurturing her own in secret. Maria Santos didn't just sing tonight, she reminded all of us what courage looks like. Later, after the cameras stopped rolling and the audience had gone home, Simon found himself walking alone through the empty arena. The lights were dim now, the stage bare, except for the equipment crew packing up. He paused at the exact spot where Maria had stood, where her voice had filled this massive space with something so pure it had changed everyone who heard it. The stage, which had seen thousands of performances, seemed to still hold the echo of her courage. His phone had been buzzing constantly, messages from colleagues, friends, industry executives, all wanting to discuss what they had witnessed. But Simon ignored them all. He needed this quiet moment to process what had happened, not just to Maria, but to him. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a contact he hadn't called in months. His mother. It was late in England, but something told him she would be awake. She answered on the second ring. "Simon? Is everything all right, love?" "Mum," he said, his voice softer than it had been in years. "I did something tonight that reminded me of you." There was a pause on the other end. His mother, who had always believed in his dreams even when others didn't, who had worked extra shifts to pay for his music lessons, who had never stopped believing in the boy who sang to himself in his bedroom. "What happened, son?" "I remembered why music matters," he said simply. "I remembered why dreams matter. I think I had forgotten for a while." He thought about Maria, probably back in her work clothes by now, collecting the programs and ticket stubs left behind by the audience. But something had changed for her tonight, just as something had changed for him. Tomorrow, the building manager would probably offer her a promotion, maybe a job in artist relations. The show's producers were already discussing featuring her in a special episode. Record labels were making calls. Her life, which had changed in the span of one song, would never be the same. But that wasn't what mattered most to Simon as he stood on that empty stage. What mattered was the reminder that behind every dream deferred, every hope pushed aside by practical concerns, there was still a beating heart waiting for its moment. Maria had shown him that it's never too late to believe in impossible things. In the morning, the video would go viral. Millions would watch the moment when a judge became human, when a cleaning lady became a star, when dreams proved stronger than circumstances. But that night, in the quiet aftermath, Simon understood that the real magic hadn't happened for the cameras. It had happened in the space between two people who recognized something true in each other, the shared understanding that dreams, no matter how long they wait in the shadows, never really die. They just wait for their moment to sing.